Hey, gang. Glad everybody's here. Um, I I think at one point we talked about how it would be great to have people taking turns talk about what interests them in physics and so forth. Um, Tonight, my only idea that I have had continuing on my mind is the role that interdimensional perception continues to play in our experiences, how holographic models of the universe or loop gravity or other theories can shed light on how we experience synesthesia, how our sensitivities are based, and so forth. Uh, but really, that's all I have. It's just a basic idea of something I'm interested in today. I've been having a lot of fatigue and some brain fog. So I'm hoping people will jump in and maybe talk about that subject. But anything that's on your mind, just a free flowing discussion would make things a lot easier for me tonight. And I think it would generate some good discussion. So I'll just turn it over to the group and jump on in when you're ready.
So I can't tell you how hard I am trying not to speak for because I always have something to say. I think what I will say is this: I am trying to learn to help my students articulate and understand this concept because my students do and say amazing things that are misinterpreted by parents and teachers. Um, I'm a little heated today, so it's probably not the best day for me to speak. I had an IEP meeting, and um, apparently I offended the 6 white people at the table because I asked questions and they felt like I was demeaning them. But that is not unusual for me. And so, I just want it to be better. I want I just so this is what I'm thinking. If I can help my kids articulate and they can understand this um, concept of dimension, because my kids say amazing things and I don't have the words to articulate it to them. So I want to learn because if they can understand it, then they can communicate that as well. And I will lastly say that proudly, after I finished asking several questions, it was agreed to table the meeting because no one at the table knew anything that I was talking about or asking. Um, so that's it. I'm just glad to be here because I needed this space.
Well,
Really
I'm
answer.
always happy to hear you. You're always welcome to say anything you want because you always hit it right on the head. Um, I want our children to grow up with this sense that they're moving through additional dimensions as well. I mean, I think that's what intelligence ends up being is seeing these connected patterns in a holographic interdimensional way. I think it's at the soul of the autistic experience, if I can generalize to that degree. But yeah, how do we bring these subjects up because they're already in a way taboo? How do we share those with kids? I am totally open to your ideas, actually.
Yeah, I was going to add to that about as a person that experiences a very holographic world, I also have many forms of synesthesia. Um, and one of the things that is difficult, I remember growing up as a child, um, was the amount of input that I could take. I was constantly overstimulated and um, continue to be, just a very overstimulated person in general because a sound is also a feeling, and it's also a sight, is also an energy code, is also, like just the doorbell ringing. My brain is processing it in several different dimensions at one time and kind of inputting it. So I think having my experience growing up, allowing for the quiet time, um, I think people are constantly wanting to like doing things. Sometimes we just have to sit on the end of the bed and stare off into space for for a while, and kind of like making that an acceptable form of something that we have to do all through the day. Like we just have to kind of shut down sometimes to I always say I call it rebooting the computer, you know. It's really what it feels like. I have to take like a little short nap every now and then. So like allowing for that kind of rest with that kind of a mind is super important. So I just wanted to add that as my experience and how I could maybe possibly help children too.
And that's a really good point because when I work with parents, their kiddos need them for co-regulation, but they don't want to engage. It's like I just want you to sit here, and so the parents view it as, well, they're not. They're just on their iPad, and they're not engaging with me. I'm like, I just need you there. Can you just sit there and read a book? Like, just I don't know, flip through Pinterest. Like, do whatever. Like, drink a glass of wine. Like, just be there. It doesn't have to always be doing something. And that's hard to break because parents are trained to do, right? We have to constantly be in their face and constantly playing or whatever it is that folks are doing. And they don't, it's hard to explain that they're okay. And to your point in terms of silence, and I'm just going to share this really quickly, the teacher was explaining that she wanted the student to not wear her noise canceling headphones because that would help her integrate into the school environment easier. And when she doesn't have the headphones, she puts her ears, and the teacher said, I mean, even when it's quiet, and I just tell her, you know, it's okay, it's not. I said, no, you're not saying that anymore. No more. How are you going to tell the child what experience they're having? I need you to look outside of your perspective and understand that other people perceive things differently. And that seems to be so difficult for people. Um, don't know why, because it's not easy for me, but it's just such a difficult thing. And so I do appreciate hearing and everyone sharing because it helps me help my kiddos who are going to be a force to be reckoned with when they grow up. Um, but helping their parents to understand. So thank you for sharing that about the silence because it is important.
When I was a kid, I tried to explain to people I was exhausted because of the light, the amount of light I see. It still happens. Even when I'm in the deepest cave with my eyes shut, I have billows and billows of bright light. It happens every night when I go to sleep. They eventually condense into shapes and into dreams. I can stay conscious while it goes into those dreams. That is not a three-dimensional experience of information processing. It's exhausting, just that one sense by itself. And then, of course, I have synesthesia and all kinds of other things. So yeah, I'd love to hear people's experiences with that, or any sensory stuff like that.
I have a question for and Dawn as well. I never heard the word that you said before, cynicism. But when I tried to look it up, it came up as cynicism. I'm like, no, it's not the word. So I never heard that word before. So I was
That's
wondering.
synesthesia.
Yeah, how do you spell
It's a
that?
blending of senses. For example, there's several forms that you can have. The most common, I think, is when people see letters and numbers as colors. Um, I don't
Oh,
have that one. The ones I experience are more sound to sight to feeling to even tactile response. If I'm in a really loud club, it will feel like people are tapping on my skin, and it's not happening, but that's just there's a crossing of my sound into my visual cortex. There's a crossing of my sound. The neural pathways are kind of merging onto freeways. with
Oh,
with like other senses, and so you get a blended sense where there's multiple parts of your brain processing one stimulus. Um, which I think a lot of creativity come. I'm an artist and musician, so I know like a lot of creativity can come from these things, but also it can be very exhausting and limiting. And like I live a very eccentric, solitary life, like a
yeah, me
hermit.
too, pretty much. I get that.
Yeah, because I can't handle. I don't have the processing availability for a whole lot of stuff happening. So,
Yeah,
um,
same.
those are one of the things. But synesthesia is definitely a really interesting subject because
Hmm.
the amount of perception that we can experience as humans is just so much larger, I think, than what we were originally taught with like the five senses. There's
Hmm.
there's so much more depth and um, color and all kinds of
Hmm.
things. So
Do
I
you know
think
how
it's
to?
something you
Do you know how to?
experience.
Do you know how to spell that word, by the way? Because I'll look up. I'll look it up more.
Yeah, it is a difficult one. I'm gonna look it up too because
Thanks.
Someone put it
I'm
in the
also
chat.
dyslexic. So here we go.
Someone put it in the chat.
It's
Oh, okay.
SYNESTHESIA.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'll look that up more about that later.
Yeah, if you have any other questions, but it just yeah, that's kind of my I guess take on it. Very unprofessional, but
Oh no, it's okay. Yeah, I think I like get the gist of it. Yeah, thanks.
I'll add that I can taste colors and um, certain sounds have a visual appearance for me. If I hear a loud, sudden sound, I see black and white chevrons, for example. Um, my synesthesia was stronger when I was a child. I think it's kind of starting to come back a little stronger now. Not sure why exactly, but yeah, synesthesia to me is just all about an interdimensional model of sensing.
John, do you think that you said it was stronger when you were a child? Do you think that when we're children, because we get so much feedback that we just sort of learn to not, it's almost like the loss of innocence, right? Like when children don't see color and they just play with anyone and they don't see disability until an adult says, "Ooh, that's something different." And then they start shifting it, or do you think it's just because when you're an adult you're busy and you can't really embrace the synesthesia? I'm just throwing out, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think both things are true. Just speaking for myself, I had so much bullying and abuse, as almost all of us do, that what ended up happening for me is that I'm very strong visually, like with the light. I just became hyper vigilant about visual information. And I think I started to prune any extraneous, sadly calling it extraneous since it's so beautiful, but cutting down that information into bite-sized chunks, I guess. And I think one reason I could be getting it back now is the immersion in CASY and people just talking, just masking less and reworking those muscles again. It's kind of a good feeling to think it could come back. Did that answer your question? Cool. Anybody?
Could I offer a thought? The situation with the teachers and the children is framing the context of the situation not correctly. People who are neurotypical, what they do is they see that conformity means that you are fitting in your proper place in the social structure. To them, it's about social dominance and social relationship, who's in positions of power and who is not. So when you go in and you say that my child has difficulties with lighting or I have synesthesia, they're not hearing what you're saying. What they are hearing is, here is the structure that we have defined. If you do not fit in that structure, you're some kind of threat to us. And that comes from evolutionary psychology. Way back in the days, fitting into the group meant survival. That's what it meant. So if you fit in with the group, you would survive, you would live. If you didn't fit into the group, you got rejected and you died off, and your genetics simply didn't get transferred. It's that simple, but that trait, it continues to exist among human beings. So when you go in and you talk with teachers, they're not talking not only the same language, they have no concept of what you mean, because they are framing everything, whether it's conscious or subconscious, in terms of the social dominance hierarchy. Okay? And for somebody to be outside of that is a subconscious threat to that social dominance hierarchy, and they define their identity by being where they are at in that dominance hierarchy. Okay? So, whereas people who are atypical neurologically, we don't see that. We don't have to be right in an argument. We want to be correct. We're looking to get to the facts. They will literally, we've all been around people who will sit there and just, they will throw fits. You show them facts and they fall apart. And it becomes, they will fight to the bitter end not to be wrong because it threatens their place in the social dominance hierarchy. So now, if you go in and you tell a teacher, you can't conduct yourself this way because my child is neurotypically different, they're perceiving that at least some level as a threat to their position in the structure. So what you have to do is you have to first go in there and disarm them from that threat, or else they're impossible to talk to because they have no neurological reference to understand what's occurring. My 2 cents.
You are absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. That's exactly what it is. That's exactly what it is. And, you know, it's my job to go in there and break it down and help them understand. And they don't always understand. Luckily, we have other options. They don't have to go to that school. But it is. I think you said it so well. It's the ingrained compliance of the social structure and needing to feel, which, I guess it's kind of sad when you think about it. But I understand the dynamics of it. Logically, I understand it. Emotionally, it's frustrating because I feel that if you have chosen to educate children, then you need to look outside of yourself. And that's just my standpoint as an educator. And if you can't do that, then go do something else because the children need you to be able to do that. I totally get it. Yep, but that's all right.
Yeah, I mean, I think at no point in history has this degree of homogeneity been so fixed on so many. Because yes, as an anthropologist, I can say there's this tendency in humanity to be uniform, but different kinds of minds have always furthered our evolution. They are absolutely essential. And I think that these multidimensional ways of being do actually give rise to art and innovation and invention, diplomacy, just reaching into different worlds, whether that's through gender differences or nature and the group or whatever. I think those things are all really important, and they're being beaten out of us. Yeah.
If I could make another comment, you're absolutely right. Genetic diversity is a huge thing, as well as psychological diversity. However, historically, look at what price people paid who were artists, people who were musicians, people who did things outside of the box. Frequently, it's not hugely accepted by society in general.
Yeah, that's well. Yeah, those were very well said.
As an artist and musician, I'll just say that my experience mirroring what you're saying is some people, they can't see me because I don't fit in their paradigm. Like some of my family members can't understand the way that I live or how I am because I just don't fit in their they they literally, it's like their brain can't even process it, you know? So that's definitely, yeah, and in schools too.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very well said. Yeah, the brain pretty much labels anything that's different, and like you said, it's seen as a threat. So then it's kind of like they want to push it aside away from them because they don't know what it's like. So yeah, and people that don't fit the typical mold, they're treated differently, and it happens consciously and unconsciously. So it was very well said.
Well, if I could offer a thought as something that might help, and not just an observation but thought, when I interact personally with people who are normal, let's say, I'm being kind here, what I do is I compartmentalize my life. There is one person where I play out the scripts that I know that I have to speak to them so that they understand what I'm saying. And it's a whole set of scripts that I've developed that are not me personally. It's just something that I have to do to get them to understand where they need to understand so that we can have a working relationship. Then I compartmentalize that completely. So when I speak to people who are more, say, on the autistic spectrum or neurodivergent, whatever you want to call them, or artistic, does not matter. I don't have to play out that script. I can then say, I can then be candid and very honest and open. Okay. So I developed a string of scripts that I use to interact with other people that help them. That I can, you can see the lights going on in their eyes, and then you remember those words, those scripts that work for them, and then you can achieve your goal of working together and cooperating by understanding that it's nothing personal. It is just a different place. It's like if you go to work versus if you're taking care of a baby at home. You kind of have a different script that you play. That's the thought.
One thing that we've been talking about recently that I think is interesting is that autistic people are, the sticky group that we are without boundaries. We don't tend generally to weaponize information as an individual commodity. Like you said earlier, we want to get to the big T truth. We want to know it all. We want to see all of the perspectives. And I feel like because we have these interdimensional holographic ways of being, when we get together, we become more than the sum of the parts, like a larger mind. And the way that we share information is all about that, getting to some larger understanding with all of these gems reflecting each other.
Great. There is a comment in the chat that is requesting to be read. I'll read it out loud. It says, Dawn, could you say more about what you mean by interdimensional? This feels very like a very abstract concept to me. And I should probably also add on to that is like I do see a bunch of new faces. And for those who may be unfamiliar with the notion of autistic physics, I think maybe I'm sure it's not easy to encapsulate, but maybe a really short primer might help some folks.
Sure. Well, classical physics looks at the material world, a three-dimensional world, for example. And this, I think, is what most neuronormative people experience. Um, even some professional physicists deal mostly in classical mathematics, for example. But in exploring the idea of a holographic and conscious universe, it just means that an individual is not a separate thing. We are kind of a sensory node that is equally connected to all other sensory nodes. And that sensory node can be our experience, It can be a group's experience. It can be a culture's experience or way of being. One sort of simple thought exercise I give to people to describe a holographic model is if you imagine a net laid out on a table, and at each place the net crosses itself, there's a gem, and each of those gems reflect all of the other gems instantaneously, superluminally, or faster than light. Now, if you take that same net off the flat table and you roll it into a perfect sphere, you see another set of dimensions about this holographic model, each gem reflecting every other gem instantaneously, superluminally, emotionally, spiritually, sensorially, in terms of thought and mind, all of it connecting. And then the last jump, which is kind of hard for some people, is to imagine that sphere then expanding into all conceivable dimensions, and still every single tiny bit is reflecting every other tiny bit in ways that make up mindfulness, a conscious holographic universe in which we participate. Let me know if I answered the question or if I can clarify further.
Thank you, that's very helpful. This topic is reminding me of one of my favorite books of all time called A Wrinkle in Time by Madeleine L'Engle. It's a really beautiful story. Just to give a brief synopsis, it's about, well, first of all, it's very autistic coded. It was one of my favorite books as a child, and I recently reread it last summer, and I was like, oh my gosh, wow, I know why I liked this book so much as a kid. It follows a few of these siblings who, their dad goes missing. He's like a physicist guy. He does a interdimensional travel sort of through this tesseract, and he ends up, going missing, and they try to find him. There's these like beings who are fighting these dark forces that corrupt planets, and they're interdimensional beings who are also able to time travel. Not time travel, but warp space and time to travel across the universe. Um, Anyway, I'm just thinking about like this. They go to this planet that's like been corrupted by the darkness, where their dad has been held prisoner, and it's everything is all homogenous. All of the people have been programmed through this like giant pulsating brain. Um, to everything is in sync. All of the children bounce their balls at the same time. All of the mothers come out of their houses at the same time to call their kids in for dinner. There's literally nothing individual about any of the people on this planet, and it's been corrupted. And it's such an interesting metaphor, I think, for just the I don't know. Like whenever I read that book, I always get chills when I read about this planet, how no one is allowed to be individual. But they go to different planets, and there's these beautiful beings that like sing and they harmonize, or they give really good care and they can communicate and express themselves. And they go to this other planet where there's this being named the Happy Medium who used to be a star, but like gave her light up to fight these dark forces, and has to change her form and like hide out in this cave. And I think about like my experience with a burnout, and how like there's that saying, the light is darkness, or the light bulb is brightest before it burns out, and how I don't know, I just think about autistic folks who've had to really kind of go into their caves and become hermits after they like supernova themselves, trying to burn as brightly as they can, ultimately burning out. I don't know. There's so many beautiful metaphors in this book. I don't want to take off up too much time, but I think about like how different authors like through beautiful metaphors have been able to capture some of these concepts in science fiction and in literature. And if anyone hasn't read this book, I recommend it because it's a really beautiful book.
Yeah, for some of the people who are newer and haven't had the gift of listening to physics members talk about their experience, a lot of us experience a linear space-time, and that is a kind of exhaustion that we haven't even come near to talking about. When I was a kid, for example, and other people can tell their stories if they want, but for example, when I was a kid, seeing parts of time going backwards and some parts of time going forward at the same time, or missing time that isn't accounted for by any, pathology. These are just what I would argue might come close to shamanic experiences. I don't want to steal anyone's cultural traditions or words, but the shamanic experience of being able to encounter multiple dimensions in an alinear way. I think this has been something that some people can do from the beginning. Possibly animals still do it all the time. I don't know.
I would like to say that that space-time experience you're talking about actually runs in my family. Like the women in my family have this experience, and we are all actually work with animals or in this kind of either that or nurses or so. We all work in this kind of. I'm an animal communicator and animal caregiver as well. But yeah, the time, the way I see time is like several bubbles of um, possibilities that can happen, probabilities, and it's all math. It's like a pattern, and I can see time going forward and backwards, like, and I can go in my mind to those different paths. I don't know how to explain it. But it's very much, time and space. Everything's happening now, and there's like several versions of ourselves happening now, but our consciousness can only be in one of those bubbles, or maybe two. So that's kind of how I understand it to be. And so did my grandmother and my great grandmother as well. So I think that's interesting.
Can I offer another thought? It kind of brings it back to more of the human realm. People are such social creatures that we validate our understanding of life, reality, and the world and universe socially. It's kind of a strange thought, but that's what we do. Through conversations such as this, or learning in school, or from our parents, people don't really establish much of a relationship with the nature of reality and the nature of life and being human outside of that social relationship. One of the things that causes, I think, conflict and difficulty between people who are on the autistic spectrum and normal people is that their perceptions of reality are far more rooted in the social relationships than ours. Ours tend to be more observational. We tend to want to see all the little facts build up to the big picture, whereas they kind of dismiss the facts because it has, what's the word they use in a marketing? I think they call it social validation or something like that. Where they will say, buy this because everybody's doing it. And we don't buy it because everybody's doing it. We buy it because we have a different sense or perception of the world. Now, sometimes we may buy it because other people are doing it, but by and large, that becomes the biggest conflict, I think, between us and others, is that they don't sense the relationships with the natural world the same way we sense the relationships with the natural world. They sense it almost always through social validation. So, hence, when you start speaking fact, that takes them right out of their universe. And their universe is, well, the boss said it's true, or so and so said it's true. When we're saying we don't care who said it's true, we want to see the evidence. And so when you talk about three-dimensional time continuums, a lot of that probably is a variation on how you perceive the world differently than neurotypical people. I thought.
That is so
That's a really
good.
good point. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No. I did not know I was unmuted. Sorry.
You can go ahead. I'll remember what I was going to say.
Go ahead.
It made me think when you said in reference to the social construct. Sometimes I think that, um, neuronormative, whether it's a teacher, parent, sibling, sometimes I think they're just envious that the autistic child in their family is just happy within their own space. And I think they have a hard time with understanding that they just don't really need you right now to be like happy. They're doing okay with whatever they are processing in their brain, and I think that's hard. And it goes to your point of there's no social connection, so they don't know what to do when the child. And I'm saying child. I mean, of course, teens and adults, but they just don't know what to do. And the only reason I say children is because children have no autonomy, so they're kind of stuck. Teens and adults can at least walk away. Yeah, that's a really. Thanks for giving me something to think about.
Well, it's if you remember that your behavior disrupts their neurology as much as their behavior disrupts your neurology, then you at least have kind of a meta look at it. It's, wait a minute, we're both disrupting each other's neurology. The problem for us is they're in the majority.
I think I have something to add to it. Kind of ties back to multiple points that everyone brought up, like the with the book of Wrinkle in Time, right? Is so much mainstream media that is tends to be autism coded is magical, right? It's this magic when we're actually dealing with people in real life, in our, whether it's the workplace or in education, we can't find the magic. It's nowhere to be seen. But understanding that there are intergalactic beings who can sense the elements of nature and use them to form their reality is like totally accepted when it's like Elsa from Frozen, right? But when it's us at the workplace trying to say how the lights or the temperature are affecting our ability to rule our kingdom, it's like it's just unfathomable. So I think that when Stacey, you mentioned like that envy, it's because it does present another way of being, right? They're used to thinking about it in this magical text, and like if I validate that you have a magic power, well, does that mean I don't? Does that mean you're better than me if I don't? So I've just come to try to, and because we do have to live amongst other people who might not sense what we sense, or who can't dream and predict when, their mom's about to have a baby or when their father will be back. It's like you just have to try to mediate with the magic, use it to your advantage. Just, describe that you just had a feeling when it's actually a recurring thing that you experience. And, just, it sucks to have to bend it that way, but because we all live amongst that type of situation over, if you can use it to your advantage, then fine, fuck it, I'll describe it as magic or some coincidence,
It is really powerful, and I think because neuronormative people tend to work in a hierarchical frame, they can't imagine that someone would have something special that they just offered everyone. I mean, that to me is how it should be. Like, we all have different gifts, and that magic is real, like you said. And why wouldn't that be our gift to everyone? Yeah. I'd like to hear from people too, like a little more, if you feel comfortable, like on a personal level, how this has affected some of your relationships. So, for example, um, even up until recently, I used to beg my mom, "Can we just sit together? Can we just sit together so I can feel you?" And I don't know if it goes back to like a different kind of nervous system, sort of like we were talking about. But that whole idea of sitting silently and feeling someone is just almost looks like it shorts neuronormative people out. What do you guys think of that?
Yeah, I feel like it's like the space and time has to be filled all the time. Like that's what I feel like the other person is trying to do. Like they have to fill in this space and this quietness with something. I do have a great group of artist friends who are also various forms of neurodivergent, and we do something called parallel play. And one of my really great friends, autistic, also is will come over and we'll both have our headphones on, and we may not speak to each other or barely even look at each other, but we'll work on our individual art projects together. Um, or one of my friends, I'll talk to her on the phone while she's cleaning her house because it kind of helps her to propel herself. So there's ways that you can connect with other neurodivergent people where they can understand things, but having language for it is important. So one of the ones I would like to just say is like parallel play, and somebody in the comments said body doubling is another one. And yeah, it's just sitting in, being in close proximity, but not necessarily having to um, perform the social aspects is important.
Yeah, I'm so glad you mentioned that. A lot of folks who join this group, one of the questions we ask is, um, if they have a specific goal or reason they want to join. And a lot of folks, are trying to sort of figure out what you just described. The roadmap that has been presented in, I guess, neuronormative society, it's the wrong map for a lot of neurodivergent people. So they go through life navigating this world using the wrong map. And it leads to a lot of confusion and distress. And once they realize this, after probably taking lots of data and experience and lots of bruising and beat ups, physically and emotionally, that hold on, there's got to be there's another way. I just need to learn what it is, and I think what you guys are sharing today, really goes directly to that. It's like people don't really know, people aren't pre-programmed with this stuff. A lot of times people discover it. So if we can facilitate people's discovery earlier, then I think that would lead to a lot of quality of life earlier rather than later, and probably just affect your well-being. So really appreciate everyone sharing.
One quick question that this makes me think of is it makes me think of the way that we perceive people in our space. So, for example, when my friend comes over, I might already know how they're feeling in a way. I don't know how to explain that, but how much, or like, maybe we don't have to have that small talk. Maybe we are already picking up on so much as well. I think that's part of it too.
If I could chime in, I've heard this description. I think it's perfect, and I say it to a lot of people. They say, this woman told me this one time. She said, "How do you tell the difference between an introvert and an extrovert?" Well, an introvert or an extrovert goes to a party and they're energized by all the people, and an introvert goes to a party and they're worn out by all the people. And that's kind of a classic. I'm sure most of you've heard that. But I find that if I explain autism like that to other people, they start to get it because they can draw a parallel. They've seen that happen with introverted and extroverted people.
And it depends on the party too, right?
Like, I mean, I've been spending more time in close proximity with groups of neuroholographic people, and it is such an energizing experience. A high. I mean, it's just a high I can't even describe. Some people get it just over the airwaves when we're meeting like this, and people have described this sense of quickening, like a physical resonance or energetic jolt, and I think that is part of that as well. So it's not even doesn't have to even be local, which is exciting to me in terms of the physics.
Yeah, especially with your shamanistic experience, Dawn, I'm sure that like voyages can also kind of feel like surfing the web as well. And you know, in the shamanist space, they always say, you know, make sure your computers are unplugged before you go because it's a portal. You can invite energy even in a dormant computer, right? So it can feel that same way, whether a group chat is activated or, you know, you're on a call like this or if you're in a space. Um, Sometimes even entering a room that a lot of people have just previously entered, or, you know, maybe a party has ended and now that's it's a shared space and now you're in there and it's empty, but it's not quite yet empty. You know, those are all feelings that can resonate. So I find that as long as I allow um, input and I acknowledge and I check the input of all of my sensory areas, so not just what I'm physically holding or seeing, but also what am I sensing, what am I thinking, what am I anticipating, what am I dreading, what am I dreaming, um, before I take a looking around. I think that allows for a better read of whether or not you're ready to go into a party or not. I love that explanation. I absolutely love what you like. I wanted a T-shirt, like, because I think it makes it so clear. And my question, of course, is so extroverts and introverts like always like it's always you hook up like you marry an extrovert if you're an introvert, and then there's the battle. I mean, clearly I'm very much an extrovert and I'm married to very much an introvert that has a social battery like this. So we work it out because I'm fine by myself. However, it's interesting the way you termed it in terms of the party. I like that. Thank you so much. I'm going to use that, borrow that, share that.
And the cultural features are interesting too. Like, what if you're the only person of a certain culture and you're normally an extrovert, but you find yourself surrounded by a culture of people that you don't know, or you don't feel confident in efficient and friendly communication. Like, there's so many different cultural spins on that interest me. And I was going to say that regarding portals, I mean, I think everything in our environment, particularly, I guess, maybe for autistic people, can be a portal. So I'd love to hear people at some point, maybe not now or whenever you like, talk about what becomes a portal for you. Stress, certain sensory things, visual cues. Like, portals are super interesting.
If I may, you brought up an amazing topic. I'm just turn my camera on so you can see, you guys can see me. You brought up an amazing topic about portals, and it's recalling a book that I wrote last year that my therapist required me to, well, not required, but strongly suggested that I do in the last several years since finding out that I was autistic, because I was comparing the experience to quantum jumping. I look at a lot about physics, and so the book is titled, which is the meeting of two worlds, of two experiences, and I kind of put it into like a metaphor of me feeling like around neurotypical people I have to be earthly and, you know, sane and things like that, and then when I'm around other neurodiverse people, I can go to that portal, go through that portal and experience. Loosely, oddly enough, that someone brought up A Wrinkle in Time. It was loosely inspired by that book, and thereafter the movie that I saw, the adaptation, and so I find myself dealing with that often, the portal experience. So I'm here when I have to be with normies, if you will. I hate to use that euphemism, but be with neurotypical people, and then I'm able to unmask, be myself, and be floated in where I would like to truly be. So I do experience that as well.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Quantum jumping. Oh,
One of my
favorite.
Love to read quantum jumping books.
I mean, I experience it myself. I talk to other autistic people that experience. Oh, you just lit me on fire.
Glad I could help.
I love working with portals in my artwork. I think of my artwork as portals. I think of myself as a portal. I feel like I feel like a lot of us are portals. We bring a kind of energy into a space with us that creates, catalysts sometimes for people. So that's how we are portals. But like a lot of my artwork, I think of as portals. Like I feel like I'm channeling almost like a channel. Like I'm an electrical cord, pulling some energy through and putting it into art. And people then will connect with that art in some way that is perhaps meaningful. So I think of that as portals.
There's a whole genre of fiction called portal fiction. You might think of Alice in Wonderland, Going Down the Rabbit Hole, My Neighbor Totoro. If there's any Ghibli fans in here, there's like a hole in the tree and she meets the forest spirit. So many of my favorite books as a kid were about portals, and I think about earlier talking about synesthesia. The Disney movies Fantasia were huge for me, like connecting music and art, and how often when I'm making art, I'm making art to music, and there's something there, there's like that inner world inside of me that sort of opens up through the art images that I'm working with, and it's amazing. Like there's whole like stories and worlds and characters that I haven't even met yet that are inside of me, and through just being quiet and being it in my own space and letting myself feel into myself, like I love the word channeling that you just used. Channel them. And it's amazing. I think about all of the authors who've written beautiful works, and how you get to share in their imagination, and I don't know, it's just, I could talk about this all day.
I'd love for people to write down some of these things that really, like I said, set them on fire so we can use them as topics each time. My thoughts have been so diffuse. I'm so interested in all of this, but each time we've sort of tried to condense, well, here's how we're going to run the physics sessions. It never works, and I think that's happened for a reason. But maybe we could just bring up like these things that really set us on fire at the beginning, and we could talk about each of those, like one in each session, or however that gets, however that marshals itself. These things tend to take on a life of their own, being what they are, right?
I kind of see this as a bit of a think tank. So we've got so many great ideas and so many different experiences, and it's hard to put them all into one place. And sometimes it's like kind of like almost like a snowstorm of great ideas. So I think trying to distill them, and maybe when we go back and look at these videos, there's certain things we would want to talk about in more detail. I mean, there's so many things that have been said today that I'm going to have to rely on the video to figure out what my favorite parts are, because there's just so many to remember.
Yeah, it seems like the important piece right now, as we started, this is our fourth one, I think, has really kind of moved around validation. I think people have just needed a lot of, like you said, think tank, yes. But I think people are bringing up things they just need validated, in terms of their way of being in the world. I tried to get to visit with us today. He came up with a beautiful sort of synopsis of the holographic universe and how it would work. particularly beautiful to me because he and I have good-naturedly argued about this for a long time. He's kind of a classical physicist, and so he's sort of, I've moved him over from the center a little bit. But I would love to see us start, coming up with these narrative equations, sharing how we actually think and experience things, and the combinations, the synesthesia, the framework part of it. I think that's going to be really interesting. I agree. Does anybody have anything they want to add as we come up to the top of the hour?
I would like to share a happy story. So I got in contact about 8 months ago with a gentleman from Iran, and we've been meeting, and he wanted to know more about autism because he was doing a study. And the first time I met with him, we talked for at least 3 hours. And I said to him, "You do know that you're autistic, right?" And he was like, "Well, I don't know." So time has passed. We have spoken, and it's actually against the law for him to talk to me because there are certain people they can't talk to. But I live in Mexico, so I'm like, you're not talking. Mexico's not on the list. But we met earlier this week. I guess maybe it was yesterday, and he was talking about an experience, and he said, "Yeah, because as an autistic person," I was like, "What? Did you just say you were autistic?" He's like, "Oh yeah, yeah, yeah," and I'm like, so happy for you. So it was really exciting to see his journey to realizing that he really was just trying to find out and understand himself, right? And through talking, so it was kind of exciting. So I just wanted to share that because it was a great moment. Yes, that's it.
You're such a great advocate. I mean, you're just one of the best allies I've ever known. And so I love it that you serve as a real bridge energetically from this community to a wider audience. Very much appreciate that. And thank you for validating our experiences as well, the way that you do. It's good for us to do it for each other, but thank you for doing it. So I don't know if we have a date for the next CASY Physics, but I'll definitely put it in the events. We also have a Facebook, CASY Facebook physics page that you can easily find, and it's a private group, so we let you in after you answer a couple questions. So look for all that, and also, it's great to have a space on Facebook where the physics is kind of centered, where we can talk about all of these ideas for those of us who are more visual or communicate better in writing or movement or what have you. So don't hesitate to check that out. What a wonderful discussion. I hope everybody that came tonight comes back next time because I'd love to hear more from you. Really interesting. Thank you. Thank you. Roger, I'll turn it over to you to close out.
Great, wonderful. So we do have a date for the next meeting. I believe it's Friday, February 21st at 7 p.m. So yeah, it's on the Facebook page, it's on the meetup page, or some people, they email us if they don't have access or don't know how to use either. So we could just shoot you a link. So just reach out. Yeah, so thanks everyone. And really hope to see you all next time.